Initiating moisture.
Welcome to Moist Meter. Let's dive right in. I saw Alien Covenant. I've got a lot to say. I'm a huge fan of the Alien series, and even Prometheus, despite all of its shortcomings, there was a lot of problems with that movie. And I'm happy to say that Ridley Scott has taken all of that criticism from Prometheus and wiped his asshole with it. He has taken all of it, thrown it in the garbage, and said, fuck you. Every problem that existed in Prometheus exists in Alien Covenant. The main problem I have with this movie, and the same problem I had with Prometheus, the same problem everyone had with Prometheus, the scientists don't act like scientists. They're fucking stupid. They act like high school students going to a log cabin for a vacation. In the very first scene of this movie where they enter the foreign world, it's not the first scene, but in the beginning of the movie where they go into a foreign world, they don't even dress in spacesuits or anything. They're dressed like they're going on a weekend fishing trip. A strip club has a more strict dress code than what these scientists wore to a world they didn't even know. They didn't scan it or anything, they just assumed since it was like Earth, it'd be totally fine. On just an alien fucking planet, and it didn't even cross their mind to wear a helmet at least. And let me just say, this entire movie, everything that went wrong, could have been avoided if they had worn a helmet and nothing else. They could have worn a helmet and fucking swim trunks, and this movie wouldn't have happened. Because the main problem here is, one person gets their ear infected with the pathogen for the xenomorphs, and another person gets their nose infected with it. That could have been easily avoided with a helmet, something that should be pretty standard procedure for some advanced elite scientists, you know, something even a fucking 4th grader would think of. So the two people that get infected with the pathogen, you know, obviously they die and it leads to a lot of problems. They lose the escape vessel, all this type of shit. They meet David, you know, the same, it's just a whole cascade of bad shit that happens just because they couldn't put on a fucking helmet. Another thing that I think would be common sense for scientists is to not just touch everything mindlessly. These people literally can't stop touching shit. They touch everything. One of the people that gets infected with a pathogen touches this foreign fungus that just goes right up his nose, and then he just goes about his day like nothing's wrong. Another person touches a fucking giant testicle pod holding the face hugger, and then unsurprisingly gets attacked by the face hugger. Why do they have to touch everything? They're like fish attracted to the shiny lure, except these aren't even shiny or even that interesting. There's no reason to be touching half of this shit. They just touch the gnarliest and grossest looking shit with their bare fucking hands. I don't get it. It'd be like looking at dog shit on the side of the road, pulling your car over just so you could poke it. I'm not gonna keep ranting about how stupid the characters are, but just know that is the entire reason this movie even happened, is because the scientists couldn't act like scientists or even anyone with common sense. They just acted like fucking zombies. It's hard to understand why Ridley Scott can't write some competent characters. But anyway, I will say that the story was interesting. I've always been a really big fan of the overarching plot. I find it to be a really fascinating concept. And this movie's major saving grace is Michael Fassbender. He is just absolutely spectacular. He plays 2 roles. He returns as David and also plays a new synthetic named Walter, and it's just, he does an absolutely outstanding job with both characters, and I truly believe David is probably one of my favorite movie antagonists of the last 10 years at least. I really just like him as a villain. I also, of course, really like the settings and the way everything looks in the movie. It all looks really breathtaking. The gore and shit's really convincing and disturbing. It's just, it's a Ridley Scott movie, you know, you get what you expect. You get gore, you get pretty settings, you get pretty looking shit. So I have no complaints in those departments, and I also thought the acting was really good. I thought all of the actors and actresses did an outstanding job playing their brainless vacuum cleaners. Now there's one scene in particular I want to point out, not in regards to good acting or anything, just a scene I think needs to be talked about, especially for me. I consider myself a recording connoisseur, a virtuoso of the recorder, and the recorder actually plays a role in this movie. It actually comes in and makes its fucking AAA big budget movie debut, which it deserves. It's just good to see it in the movie, a movie. And it's a really weird scene though. David's whittled a recorder out of wood, Walter finds it and wants to learn how to play it, so David starts to teach him, and it's this really oddly romantic scene, and it's kind of strange since it's both played by Fassbender. So it's just a strange thing there. And the scene went on for so long, it was like an actual full-length recorder lesson for the entire audience. I wanted to start taking notes so that way I could learn this shit when I got home for my recorder. But anyway, back to big points. The last 25-30 minutes of this movie are just great, and the ending is spectacular. A really, really solid ending that I think fans of the series will really appreciate. However, if you haven't seen any of the Alien movies before this, especially Prometheus. If you haven't seen Prometheus, you're going to be lost in this movie. It doesn't do a good job of bringing new viewers in. You have to be familiar with the story in order to really get the most out of this, otherwise it just doesn't really make too much sense. Now let's take all this shit into consideration and slap this bitch on the moist meter. This is about a 60% to me. The story is really just fascinating. I love the themes of creation, and I really like the way they weave all of that into the core ideas of the movie. However, it's just really hard to excuse some of the decisions the characters make and just suspend this disbelief that these scientists are this fucking stupid, and that all of this could have been avoided if they just followed common sense. But putting all that aside, the movie is very pretty to look at times disturbing when characters are getting killed off. The gore is just very visceral. It's also just a really interesting story that I think, even though you may not know what's going on if you haven't seen Prometheus, you'll still find yourself very interested in. And just overall, it has a lot to offer. It's intense, there's a lot of action, a lot going on, and then it leads to a great ending to the movie. So yeah, that's it. See ya.